I'm back. Hold on, y'all. Listen, this just in. It's not new to me. I've been new about this, but it might be new to y'all. Now, piggybacking off of my last video where I was asking you guys, actually telling you guys how the Switch 2 leaked specs that's out on the internet now may seem underwhelming to some or even many, but in practice the games look phenomenal and it's up there with the PS5 when you compare them visually, right? Now, and everybody's wondering how is this even possible? If on paper the specs seem weak, how is it putting out near PS5 visuals, and in some aspects it looks better with those weak specs? But guys, I'm gonna go ahead and give you the missing piece to that puzzle. Hold on to your seats. Alright guys, so we're gonna get into it. I'm gonna give you that missing piece of the puzzle I promised you all. Switch 2 specs have finally been confirmed after Nintendo spent months playing coy, and it's running a miniaturized version of 30 series GPU. Do you hear this, guys? Do you hear this? That makes a world of difference. But let me go ahead and continue. For years of Nintendo Switch 2 speak leaks seem true. While Switch 2 is putting a bigger emphasis on technical power that we have seen from Nintendo in years, the publisher has still been oddly reticent to reveal the platform's actual technical specifications. Now we're finally getting some clarity on the system specs. Switch 2 leaks have actually intensified in recent weeks as the supply chain for the console moves forward, and the folks at Digital Foundry have confirmed the specs. In short, the system features a custom NVIDIA system on a chip called T239, which features a GPU built on the same Ampere architecture that powered the RTX 30 series GPU's first release in 2020. Notably, this specification of a custom NVIDIA chip called T239 featuring an Ampere-based GPU had been leaked as far back as 2021, and if the past 4 years of leaks have had some element of truth to them, it's clear that Switch 2 has been in the works for a long time. Nintendo released a Switch 2 spec sheet alongside the console's initial reveal in April, but that only mentioned a custom processor from NVIDIA with no accompanying specs. According to Digital Foundry's rundown, we're looking at a CPU clock of 998 MHz while docked, or 1101 MHz in handheld mode, with 6 cores available to game developers and 2 reserved for system resources. There's a theoretical maximum clock of 1.7 GHz, but it's unclear in what circumstance that additional performance headroom might be unlocked. On the GPU side, it's rated for 1007 MHz in docked mode, 561 MHz in handheld mode, and theoretically maximum of 1.4 GHz. Digital Foundry suggests thinking of it as a miniaturized version of a consumer GPU. Forgive me there, guys. Similar to how the Switch 1 made use of a variant of the GTX 900 series. Here, though, we're dealing with something similar to an RTX 30 series card. Exactly what all this means in terms of concrete performance of Switch 2 is still difficult to measure without actually seeing games in action, and it's going to be tough to compare the system's raw performance against other hardware when it's making use of NVIDIA's performance boosting DLSS tech. In more concrete reveals, Digital Foundry says that VRR, which helped match the screen refresh rate to the in-game frame rate for smoother video when performance fluctuates. Is only supported for the built-in handheld screen. There is no support for VRR-enabled televisions over HDMI. Switch 2 also features a custom file decompression engine which can offload some of the burden from the CPU, which should be a lot faster and more power efficient when loading your games. Game chat also seems to be quite serious part of the platform in Nintendo's eyes, though it's one that apparently eats quite a bit of system resources, to the point where Nintendo actually provides developers with a game chat testing tool to measure the performance impact of the feature. Digital Foundry notes that game chat's impact on performance does seem to be an area of developer concern. We're now just a few weeks out from the launch of Switch 2, so the answers to many of these questions will be clear soon enough. Here's hoping that the long wait for the new hardware proves worthwhile. So there you have it, guys. I read the article to you guys. You heard the article. So not only is the Switch 2 GPU is based off of the RTX 2050, it's also using features from an RTX 30 series card. Guys, that is a huge deal. That's a huge curveball right there. And it's funny how Nintendo did the art of misdirection. Everybody was so focused on the 2050 when in all actuality they had the RTX 30 series features in the background working in conjunction with the 2050. Get what I'm saying? So that's crazy. So basically it's like two GPUs, man. They took features from the 2050 and the 30 series and combined it together in a custom chip, coupled with Nintendo's own patent for DLSS as well as NVIDIA DLSS. Wow, that's crazy. That's like 4 things going on right there with that one GPU. And no wonder, man, the Switch 2 out the gate is kicking ass and pumping out games like Cyberpunk, Elden Ring, Street Fighter 6, looking just as good and in some ways better than the PS5. That's crazy. So now I'm understanding why some of these games are looking better than some of the games on PS5. But like I told you guys, I'm not surprised. You have to pay attention. I don't understand why people just like to pick out what they want to hear instead of focusing on the facts, and especially when it's right there in your face. I've read, this is old information, guys. I've read like a year ago, they said, actually, was it a year ago? A few months ago, they mentioned that, even Spawnwave mentioned this last year. He even said it too. They were using some features from the RTX 30 series card on a custom RTX 2050 chip, aka the T239. That's crazy, man. So actually, man, this system is more powerful than we thought, and we see it in practice with the games. So that's why, guys, the Switch 2 is looking great. So actually the Switch 2 has a bright future ahead, but here's a bottleneck. The bottleneck is actually the video chat. That's really what's eating up a lot of resources. So you heard in the article, you heard in the article where they said that, even developers said this, and Nintendo's aware of this. The video chat is what putting a damper on the performance of the Nintendo Switch, and we saw it in the Nintendo Direct where they showed the 4 screens and the gameplay and performance and the image quality dropped. So yeah, but Nintendo had 8 years to figure this out, and that's why I said they should have went with at least 16 gigs of RAM. Honestly, I don't know why for the life of me they went with 12 gigs of RAM, knowing that they have to split and break that up between the operating system and the games. And when it comes to, if anybody knows about developing games, RAM is one thing you really don't want to skimp on, unless you really want to make devs upset and give them a challenge. But Why do all that, man? They should have just went with 16 gigs of RAM. If they went with 16 gigs of RAM, we wouldn't be talking about the camera feature is putting a damper on the system performance. 16 gigs of RAM, 4-player screen with your friends' faces in there wouldn't drop the frame rate or the image quality. I don't know why they didn't just go with 16 gigs of RAM. So you know what this means? This means going forward, I think a lot of games developers are gonna cut the camera feature. I don't think the camera feature is gonna be used as much during gameplay. Because if I'm a developer and I know using the camera feature is gonna take a performance hit, you won't be able to video chat while playing the game. I would just leave the chat by itself. You can always talk to your friends when you're playing the games. As far as seeing them and putting yourself in a game, especially in a particular game, you want the performance to be in top shape? No, they're going to cut that feature out. So I'm seeing that developers are going to cut that camera feature out. Some games will be the exception. Maybe the indie games or games that's not heavy resources, man. But I don't even see that happen, man. Because honestly, listen, man, from here on out, these games are going to get bigger, man. It's going to eat up more RAM. It's going to need more GPU and CPU power. So yeah, Nintendo shot themselves in the foot once again. Try to cheap out on RAM. That's one thing you should never cheap out on. But other than that, honestly, man, on paper, the Switch 2 may not seem all that, but in practice, this thing is actually really powerful. Now I know developers really weren't lying in the Nintendo voice when they said this system is powerful. It is. Yo, listen, they're using the RTX series feature from the 30 series cards with a custom RTX 2050. That's basically like 2 cards. That's a lot of power. That's actually, Nintendo's a lot of power under the hood, but they shouldn't have skipped out on RAM. And even the rumors when they said they were going for 12 gigs of RAM, I knew that was going to be a bottleneck. So they're going to have to cut that camera feature out, and I would just allocate all my resources, the extra RAM, to the games. Because if you think about it, guys, yes, I know the developers have 9 gigs of RAM to work with, which in Nintendo's world, that's actually a lot because it's not a PC where it has to multitask. So 9 gigs is actually a lot. We've seen what they did with 4 gigs of RAM on the Nintendo Switch, or I think 3 gigs of RAM. So yeah, I'd rather just use the extra RAM or 2, pretty much 10 to 10, at least 10 gigs of RAM I'll allocate to the game, and the other 2 could be for the operating system. You need a chat and the small multitasking when you want to talk to your friends and whatnot, going back into the dashboard when you pause the game. So yeah, guys, that's some good news, man. RTX 2050 coupled with RTX 30 series card features. That's a powerful handheld, man. And you know what's so funny? That means the Switch 2 is pretty much actually the most powerful handheld. It might not be able to give you those high frame rates, but as far as like GPU wise, yeah. Power wise, yeah, this thing is possibly like the best handheld out there. Just off that. It's definitely more powerful than the ROG Ally X. I could even believe that, because I don't think the Z1 Extreme is nowhere near on the 30 series graphics card level. Let me know what you think in the comment section though, guys. And you know what will make me happy? Subscribing. So like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comment section, man. What you think about Nintendo combining the 2050 series card and the 30 series card together, man. That's a powerful GPU.